T minus 1 is the moment prior to a moment of trauma, which we call T. T plus 1 is then the time after trauma has finished or is over. This is a therapeutic model that I work nearly always with every client. I just like to explain that and make some sense of what we're going to be doing together. This model was developed over many years by one of my teachers, who's a genius, David Grove, along with his wife, Kai Davis. So this is simply representing linear time, moving that way. So there was that moment, there's this moment, there's the next moment. This, T, is representing a moment in time, or longer than a moment, of trauma, or that might have been experienced as bewilderment or confusion, particularly by the younger parts of us. This is T minus 1, this is the moments just prior to T, and we're in T plus 1. We did survive the trauma, the bewilderment, the confusion, and we are in T plus 1. Okay. But not all of us. However, what the mind has the ability to do, which is an attempt to protect the mind from the possible toxic onslaught of this moment, or it might even be hours, is that the mind will freeze time right on the edge of trauma. Or if trauma comes on fast, like a shock, like seeing something shocking happen, then we have the facility to regress time back and freeze the moment right on the edge of trauma. It's a protective mechanism. Okay. So we've moved on. It's 2008. But there's part of the persona that is frozen there. And that bewilderment, that anxiety, that moment just circles and circles and circles. Traditionally, what used to happen was that therapists, analysts thought that to resolve a problem, you move time that way and relive the trauma. No. The mind was wise there to protect us from this. We might even have amnesia or forgetfulness about what actually happened in there. Why not forget it? It might have been awful to us as individuals. So what my work does, and that's down to me entirely, my work comes in here, and in that moment there is encoded a massive amount of information. We actually now know through neuroscience that in one moment the brain and the mind is taking in over 200 million pieces of information, but the mind is only dealing with about 5-7 pieces of information at any given moment. Now, in a simple example, a younger part of us might be experiencing an adult shouting. Possibly this adult is going to start smacking us. So in an attempt to stop that getting worse, so that's why it's cross-hatched here, trauma either in reality goes from bad to worse, or the reality in the mind is it goes from bad to worse. So we freeze time right there on the edge of trauma. This part of the persona remains in that frozen moment.
So it's my mind that has frozen me there rather than the trauma?
Yes.
Wow.
Ah, brilliant, hey?
Yeah.
And just a little bit more to make sense of it, how David discovered this was that he was noticing when he was working with Vietnam vets that their experience of anxieties, obsessions, depressions and so on, in the information there would be what he called a Sisyphusian verb. Sisyphus was cursed with rolling the stone up to the top of the mountain, and it never moved on and completed itself. It just keeps rolling on, rolling on, rolling on, rolling on, because we were trying to protect ourselves wisely from any toxic experience that might be in there. So he was hearing the Vietnam vets saying things like, the last thing I remember, I saw my buddy running away. So they froze time there before their buddy got blown up. They may have the memory of that, know that their buddy or buddies are actually dead. But that's where the symptoms are in that moment. So I'm listening often for these Sisyphusian verbs, the ing. So clients will often say, I feel like I'm falling, or there's a sinking feeling, or a pounding experience, or crying, yes. Because none of those experiences ever completed themselves.
Right.
What the mind also has the facility to do, again as a protection mechanism in T-1, is to regress time back, sometimes minutes, sometimes hours prior to T. So, for example, I might find a client, although the symptoms are right on the edge of T-1, where they've frozen time, they could maybe be playing out in the garden. And to assist the information to develop, to resolve the presenting symptoms, I need to grow time up, what we call grow time up, towards the edge of T-1, where the real information is contained.